The problem I have with a lot of year-end wrap-ups and top 10 lists for music that came out in a year, first is that they do it at the end of the year before the year is up, right? Which a lot of times leaves out December. I feel like people don't let the music marinate long enough in December, so it's like you're kind of skipping over everything that comes out then. And also, like, when they're naming albums, they never name anything outside of America, right? Like, I have to go search for other people's opinions about non-American artists because it's not coming to my feed. So I'm going to try something different this time, and I'm going to break it up by different parts of the world, but I'm not going to include American artists. So these are my favorite albums that came out in 2022 with no American artists on it. So let's get into it. 23 by Central Cee was one of my favorite albums of the year. That was probably one of my go-tos when I was working out. I feel like it was an improvement from his last project, Wild West, which was really good, and it was like a start to a sound, and I feel like he built upon it this time, and it does just feel like he wrote a lot better to a lot of the songs. I think the songs are more replayable than the first album. Like, there's obviously hits like Loading and Day in the Life on Wild West, but I think on this one, the songs top to bottom were better. You can listen to the project top to bottom a lot easier, at least in my opinion. My favorite songs on there were Khabib, the intro, Straight Back to It, and Boonda, which has been on repeat recently. Second, which I think if I have to pick one out of the UK, is probably my favorite and most played album, maybe of all albums, but definitely in the UK. Alpha Place by Nux. Nux, I first came across his music when I saw his Colors performance of the song Home and then Alpha House. That performance made me go dig into his catalog, and I started seeing a lot of the music that came out prior to Alpha Place. And when Alpha Place finally came out, I was pretty satisfied. I think drill music with jazz samples is kind of undefeated, and I think he's found his pocket. And I said this in a previous video that Alpha Place reminds me of Good Kid, Mad City, in the fact that it feels like they dropped a writer, a poet in the middle of the scene, and he just gave you a perfect play-by-play of what was going on in that area during that time. But instead of Los Angeles, it's London. So that's a great album that I would definitely go check out if you like rap music, period. My favorite songs on there were Alpha House, Nice and Good, which Spotify says was my most listened to song of 2022, and then Los Pollos Hermanos. But there's so many songs on there that I really love, so I would just give the whole project a listen. A surprise album that people might not consider this UK because she moved to Los Angeles so early, and she's basically been living here, it seems like, for a long time. Heart on My Sleeve by Ella Mai. I didn't really feel like people talked about it. It came out really early in the year. And in terms of R&B music, I played that album a lot when it came out. Towards the end of the year, I wasn't listening to as much R&B, so it didn't really make it. But one of my favorite songs off that project was Didn't Say featuring Latto. And I feel like Latto, at least in my opinion, the songs I've heard, I haven't heard a lot of songs where she was on slower beats or less up-tempo beats. So it was definitely interesting to hear on that. But Ella Mai, this whole project was pretty good top to bottom, right? I think it was better than the first one, if we're being real. But I don't think it had as big a hit as Boot Up or Trip. So that's probably why it might not have gotten the push that people expected, but it was just as good if you ask me. So if you like R&B music, that is something you could go check out. Another R&B project that I really liked was Adultville by Bella. If you haven't heard of Bella, she's a R&B pop artist out of the UK. My favorite song by her was Evil Eyes. Again, I found her on a Colors performance. I feel like I find a lot of artists on Colors performance. They do a good job of being pretty diverse in the artists that they pick up. That one was 7 songs long, and there were a couple songs on there that I really loved. In the Moment, Prototype was pretty good. I don't really go back to that one a lot, but In the Moment I listened to a lot, and then Evil Eye. If I had to compare her to somebody here, I feel like she's in the same vein, at least to me. Like, if I'm going to listen to Victoria Monet, maybe she would be in that same bucket. Like, if I was creating like a playlist with similar artists or similar sounds. So if you like R&B music, I would definitely give it a listen. Like, she's really good. Western Season 3 by Western also came out, I want to say in October and November. I had never heard of them prior. I found them off of a Daily Duppy freestyle. Daily Duppy freestyle is probably one of my favorite freestyle series on the internet right now. And I found them at a time when I was just getting into a lot more West Indian music, right? Like, they're from London, but one of their artists in the group is from, I think, Guyana, and I think the other one is from Jamaica, or they have ties there, right? So they have a very West Indian sound, but also like a London sound. So it's you can't really put it into a bucket, right? Which I love, right? Like, I think the whole thing about this channel is putting people onto black music globally. And I feel like this group is a perfect mix of a lot of different sounds from a lot of different places. They rap and they do a lot of melodic songs. They do a lot of everything, honestly. I feel like if the songs that I love by them the most are Unload featuring Skilly Bang, who's been one of my favorite finds of 2022. Influence featuring Dexta Daps, Wonder Woman. I hadn't heard any of their music prior to this album, so I'm probably going to do a deep dive at some point this year on their older stuff, but it was definitely a surprise this year and something that I definitely go back to a lot. Unload is on a lot of playlists for me. And another project that came out this year that I really loved was No Thank You by Little Simz. At the beginning, I was talking about albums in December that really don't get recognition because they're so fresh in mind, and this was the album I was basically talking about. But this project, something just made me stop and listen to it. It's 10 songs long, and the thing I love about the album is the production choice is obviously complementary to what she was saying. Sometimes you can tell when an artist goes into making a project when they have a specific message that they want to get across, right? And I think that it's more about what they're writing and what they're saying to people as opposed to like, I'm trying to go put out a hit song, right? And I feel like the beats on this album really made it clear that what she was saying was the most important part. And that is something I feel like we don't get a lot of in music, which is fine. Like the other stuff is cool, but this was just very intentional in the way that she went about it. So if you like rap music, this is definitely a project I would check out 100%. It might be up there with Alpha Place. It's a different sound, but is maybe just as good. I think my favorite songs off of it were the intro, Angels, the second song, Gorillas, and then Heart on Fire is my favorite song off the project. I also like No Mercy, but this project, honestly, you can listen to top to bottom, in my opinion. I don't feel like the songs, in terms of the sound, they don't feel out of place. I feel like some artists put out projects and they sound like playlists, where this feels like a full body of work. So you can kind of play it top to bottom. So those are some of my favorite projects that came out of the UK last year, 2022. If you listen to any music out there, or if I missed something that maybe I didn't hear or you thought was pretty good last year, let me know, because I'm always looking for new music.